Emily Carter had spent a decade fading into the shadows of Richard Hayes's empire, invisible in a life she had sacrificed for his ambition. The woman who once arranged every detail of his world, who wore navy blue dresses and smiled through humiliation, was gone. Tonight she walked into a gala alone, draped in emerald silk, commanding every gaze in the room. Richard froze, Nicole recoiled, and the city's elite watched, captivated, as a quiet, underestimated wife transformed into a force no one could ignore. What happens next will shatter expectations and change everything they thought they knew. Emily Carter had always been the quiet force behind Richard Hayes, a man whose very presence could bend the city's business pulse. 10 years of her life had been spent orchestrating his world, the sleek penthouse overlooking New York, the flawlessly executed investor dinners, the social galas where billionaires measured each other's power with a handshake. And all the while, Emily had faded into the background, a meticulous shadow, keeping her own dreams hidden like fragile glass behind her calm demeanor. She had once wanted to be an art historian, to immerse herself in color and creativity, but those ambitions were carefully shelved for the sake of her marriage, for the sake of the empire Richard had built. Every day had been a quiet sacrifice. She knew the subtle look Richard gave Nicole, his assistant who had crept into their lives and eventually into his heart. Emily had told herself it was just business, that a partner like Nicole could challenge him in ways she no longer could. And so she played the part, orchestrating the parties, ensuring every detail from canapes to champagne flutes met perfection. She was invisible, indispensable, and utterly forgotten. It was the night of the Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala that everything changed. Richard and Nicole were the perfect power couple. Nicole radiant in crimson silk, her laughter like breaking crystal, hanging on Richard's arm with the kind of ease Emily had once had. The room buzzed with New York's elite, a sea of glittering gowns, sharp tuxedos, and the subtle scent of opulence. Richard was confident, commanding, the center of attention, as if the world revolved around his every word. Then Emily walked in. She moved alone, carrying herself with a quiet authority that silenced the whispers around her. Emerald silk clung to her like it had been made for her alone. But it was more than the dress. It was the aura, the calm, unshakable presence of a woman who had finally found herself. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Richard's pulse hitched. Something about her was hauntingly familiar, yet utterly foreign. His carefully curated life had never prepared him for this. He froze, his eyes scanning her form, trying to place the ghost from his past. It was her. Yes, it had to be. But she wasn't the woman he remembered. The timid, serviceable wife was gone, replaced by someone formidable, alive, and completely visible. Emily didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her attention was on the people who mattered now, curators, collectors, mentors in the art world. Every step she took was deliberate, graceful, and entirely her own. Richard felt a twist in his gut, a cold jolt of something he had never experienced before. Fear, confusion, and the unmistakable sting of loss. Nicole, sensing the tension, leaned closer to Richard. "Who is she?" she hissed, her nails digging slightly into his arm. But the question was rhetorical. Everyone already knew the answer. Richard, for the first time, realized he had underestimated the one person who had built his world from the shadows. Earlier that week, Emily had quietly taken her first steps into reclaiming herself. She had left the penthouse in the early hours, leaving behind the navy blue dresses, the polished floors, the perfectly arranged canapes, and the life that had demanded her invisibility. She carried only a small silver locket from her grandmother in the quiet determination of a woman who had finally realized her own worth. The first 3 days were a haze of cheap motel coffee and silent reflection. For the first time, Emily confronted the person she had been hiding from the world and herself. She realized that the life she had built in service of Richard had been suffocating her, and that she had a right to her own dreams. It wasn't easy. She called Margaret Stone, the divorce attorney known for dismantling the gilded cages of New York's elite. Margaret listened, sharp and unyielding, as Emily recounted 10 years of quiet sacrifice, invisible labor, and personal humiliation. She was calm, composed, but a fire burned beneath her eyes. Richard had called her invisible, but Margaret reminded her that invisibility could be a superpower. Together, they plotted a strategic, surgical approach to ensure Emily received what she was owed, and more importantly, the freedom to reclaim her life. While the legal maneuvers unfolded, Emily began reconnecting with the life she had abandoned. She visited her old mentor, Professor Albright, at the university where she had nearly completed her master's in art history. Standing in his cluttered office, the smell of turpentine and aged paper filling the air, Emily saw herself as she had been, a passionate young woman with a voice that had been silenced too soon. Tears welled up as Professor Albright smiled knowingly. "I always believed in your eye, Emily. You've been silenced, not forgotten." He handed her a dusty portfolio filled with her old sketches and abstract paintings. Each page reminded her of who she was and what she could be again. That spark ignited a new vision. Emily didn't want to be the ghost behind someone else's empire anymore. She wanted to create her own space, a gallery that celebrated emerging artists whose voices had been ignored. She found a dilapidated warehouse in a small but vibrant arts district, securing it for a fraction of its value. With meticulous care, she transformed it, pouring herself into every detail. The building became more than just a space. It became a sanctuary, a statement, and a beacon for those who, like her, had been underestimated. Months of relentless work followed. Emily rose at dawn, ran along the East River to clear her mind, and began dressing not to fade into the background, but to command attention. She cut her hair into a sharp, sophisticated bob, and with each brushstroke she created and each artist she mentored, she reclaimed a piece of herself. The Phoenix Arts Gallery slowly came alive, a reflection of Emily's resilience, vision, and unyielding spirit. The night of her first major showcase arrived. The gallery was buzzing with anticipation, filled with collectors, critics, and curators. Emily moved among them, calm, confident, and entirely present. She introduced young artists to influential patrons, discussing provenance, brushwork, and artistic intent with ease. Richard Hayes, who had followed her rise out of disbelief and curiosity, arrived unexpectedly, expecting to find the same submissive woman he had discarded. Instead, he encountered a force of nature. The Emily he thought he knew was gone. In her place stood a woman radiant, formidable, and fully in control of her destiny. Emily's transformation was more than physical. It was existential. She had taken the ashes of a life built to serve someone else and risen from them, unshakable, unapologetic, and entirely visible. Richard's empire, once the center of her world, now seemed hollow and distant, irrelevant in the face of her audacious new reality. She had built something that belonged only to her, a gallery, a legacy, and a life reclaimed. By the end of the night, Emily's triumph was undeniable. The whispers of disbelief and admiration rippled through the crowd. For the first time in her life, she was not the woman behind someone else's success. She was Emily Carter, the founder of Phoenix Arts, the architect of her own destiny, and the embodiment of the truth that being underestimated can become one's greatest power. As the guests departed and the gallery quieted, Emily stood by the window, looking out over the city she had once seen only through someone else's lens. The emerald silk of that fateful gala was a memory, but the strength, vision, and unshakable presence she carried now were real. And for the first time, she knew that no one, not Richard, not Nicole, not the expectations of anyone, could ever make her invisible again. Do you think Emily should confront Richard directly about the way he treated her, or leave her past behind completely? Yes or no? Emily's rise with Phoenix Arts was only the beginning. The gallery had become a quiet storm in the city's art world, and every detail, every brushstroke she showcased was a statement of independence. But success had a way of bringing the past into sharp focus. Richard Hayes, humiliated by the impossibility of ignoring her, began asking questions, making calls, trying to trace every purchase she had made. He couldn't fathom that Emily had achieved all this alone, without an inheritance, without another man financing her dream. He had given her a severance package, expecting her to fade into obscurity, and now that same package had become the seed of her unstoppable momentum. Emily knew of his scrutiny, but it did not frighten her. She had built her gallery on integrity and vision, not on the whims of someone who had once claimed her invisible. She spent long nights poring over collector contacts, auction histories, and private sales, quietly acquiring pieces that would define Phoenix Arts as a serious institution. Her goal was not revenge, it was influence. She wanted her gallery to champion voices that had been silenced, just as she once had been. The Hafford collection had been her masterstroke, post-war abstract expressionism, raw and untamed, pieces that had shaped the modern landscape, now rested under her stewardship. Richard had pursued it relentlessly for his green technology fund, believing possession would cement his reputation. When he discovered Emily had secured it months before, he could only watch in disbelief. Every email, every call, Every attempt to negotiate had been met with polite, firm refusal. She had no need for confrontation. She had built a fortress of legitimacy around her vision, and Richard had no key. Meanwhile, Phoenix Arts began to draw attention from museums, critics, and investors. Emily hosted intimate viewings, curated emerging artists alongside the Hafford pieces, and wove a narrative of continuity, legacy, and rebirth. Richard, desperate to regain control, appeared at a small private showing under the guise of curiosity. He expected to see Emily cower, perhaps offer him a courtesy nod. What he found was an unmistakable force of confidence. Emily stood among her artists, discussing provenance and brushwork, her voice carrying authority, her gaze unwavering. He was a ghost in a space she had built from the ground up. Emily's team had grown, and she relied on talented young assistants who shared her vision. One, a sharp-eyed curator named Jonathan, introduced her to collectors whose tastes aligned with her mission. Emily had always understood the language of art, the subtle nuance, the emotional resonance that numbers and spreadsheets could never capture. She negotiated acquisitions not as a novice, but as a strategist with an innate understanding of value beyond money. Her choices reflected courage, foresight, and a deep respect for artistic integrity. Richard's frustration became a public spectacle behind closed doors. He sent emissaries, offered inflated sums, and attempted to leverage old connections. Emily listened, considered each move, then responded with calm precision. She had learned that power was not in intimidation or threats, it was in control of one's own narrative. She had rewritten her story from the moment she left the penthouse, and she refused to let anyone, especially Richard, dictate her path. The gallery's launch night approached, a culmination of months of relentless effort. Emily had planned it with the same meticulous precision she once applied to Richard's investor events, but this time, the spotlight was hers alone. The city's cultural elite arrived, curious about Phoenix Arts, and the woman who had acquired the Hafford collection so quietly. The room hummed with anticipation as Emily welcomed guests, introduced artists, and spoke of the collection's history with passion and authority. Each interaction reinforced her presence and expertise. She was no longer invisible, no longer a backdrop to someone else's success. In the middle of the evening, a familiar face appeared near the gallery entrance. Richard Hayes, flanked by Nicole, had come, ostensibly to see the exhibition. His eyes scanned the room, but there was no recognition of the woman before him, only a stunned, uncertain gaze. Emily met his glance briefly, a flicker of acknowledgement, then turned her attention back to her guests. She had no time for his astonishment. The life he had tried to control no longer belonged to him, and his attempts to assert influence were irrelevant in the space she had created. Richard's presence caused a ripple of whispers, curiosity blending with surprise. Emily's colleagues noticed the tension, but she did not falter. Every gesture, every word, every decision was deliberate. She had reclaimed authority over her story, and the gallery was an extension of that autonomy. Her control of the Hafford collection, combined with the cultivation of emerging talent, established Phoenix Arts as more than a gallery. It was a statement. She had transformed from the wife who had been silenced into a woman whose vision others would respect, regardless of their past. The next morning, Emily reviewed correspondence from international collectors and museum curators who had expressed interest in long-term collaborations. The momentum she had built was unstoppable, a direct result of her focus, resilience, and ability to see opportunity where others only saw obstacles. She understood that her power was no longer conditional upon anyone else's recognition. Richard's attempts to manipulate, intimidate, or charm her were ineffective. She was fortified by her own accomplishments. Yet she did not celebrate in isolation. Emily remembered the quiet support of Professor Albright and the few trusted mentors who had encouraged her to reclaim her voice. Their guidance reminded her that true success was measured not only by wealth or influence, but by impact, integrity, and the lives she could lift alongside her own. Her gallery was a living testament to this principle, a space where marginalized and emerging voices could be elevated and celebrated. Richard's obsession with her success escalated in private emails and frantic calls. He could not comprehend how the woman he once dismissed had built something so formidable from nothing. Emily, however, remained composed. She read his attempts at persuasion with detachment, knowing that her power derived not from confrontation, but from the undeniable evidence of her achievements. She had moved beyond fear, resentment, or need for validation. Her actions alone demonstrated her autonomy. By the time Richard returned for a second, more assertive visit, he faced a gallery fully in control of its founder. Emily's presence was commanding, her poise unshakable. She listened to his requests regarding the Hafford collection, his pleas veiled as business proposals. then calmly reiterated the gallery's stance. The collection was integral to her vision and not for sale. Richard's frustration was palpable, but it no longer had power over her. She had created a world in which she was the architect, the arbiter, and the final authority. The gallery continued to flourish. Emily's emerging artists gained recognition, her curated events drew international attention, and her reputation as a visionary in the art world solidified. Richard, meanwhile, confronted the reality that his attempts to undermine or control Emily had failed utterly. He remained wealthy, influential, and unscathed financially, yet he was powerless against the life she had built from her own determination and ingenuity. Emily's journey was a testament to the strength that emerges when one reclaims agency. The woman who had once been invisible now commanded every room she entered, every conversation she engaged in, and every decision she made. She had transformed her life through strategic thinking, unwavering focus, and a refusal to be defined by the limitations others imposed. Phoenix Arts became both a sanctuary and a monument to what is possible when resilience meets opportunity. The final measure of her victory lay not in Richard's frustration, but in her own confidence and fulfillment. Each day, she awoke knowing that the choices she made were entirely hers, that her impact was tangible, and that the life she had envisioned was no longer a dream deferred, but a reality she had created. Her success was not a reaction to past humiliation, but a proactive, deliberate construction of autonomy and legacy. Do you think Emily should ever consider forgiving Richard for the past? Or should she leave him completely behind and focus on her future? Yes or no? Emily Carter stood in the center of Phoenix Arts, sunlight streaming through the massive industrial windows, illuminating every brushstroke, every sculpture, every corner she had meticulously curated. The gallery had grown into more than a space for art. It was a testament to her resilience, vision, and refusal to be invisible. She had transformed from the quiet, overlooked wife of a billionaire into a powerhouse in the art world, a woman who commanded respect and admiration without compromise. The gallery's latest exhibition had drawn attention from collectors across the country. International curators were lining up to collaborate, journalists were eager to tell her story, and emerging artists thrived under her guidance. Emily had built a network rooted in trust, vision, and integrity, a stark contrast to the ruthless, self-serving world Richard had tried to define for her. Every handshake she made, every conversation she led, was a quiet affirmation that she was no longer bound by the expectations of others. Richard Hayes had not given up entirely. He had attempted one last approach, arriving unannounced at a private showing of the Hafford collection, hoping to sway her with charm or intimidation. Emily met him calmly, her posture confident, her expression unreadable. She listened as he tried to negotiate, tried to appeal to their past, tried to leverage any emotional foothold he thought he still had. But Emily had grown too strong, too sure of her own worth. She responded not with anger, not with tears, but with a quiet, unwavering clarity. The collection, the gallery, and her life were not for sale. For Emily, the final victory was not about defeating Richard. It was about claiming her life on her own terms. She had learned that empowerment was not granted by others, but forged through courage, consistency, and the relentless pursuit of one's own vision. Her gallery thrived because she poured herself into it completely, and every artist she nurtured, every new piece she acquired, was a reflection of her strength and dedication. Over the following months, Phoenix Arts became a hub for groundbreaking exhibitions and an incubator for new talent. Emily held educational workshops, partnered with museums for outreach programs, and hosted artist talks that inspired the next generation. Her life was full of purpose, connection, and impact, far richer than any luxury Richard could offer. The man who had once dismissed her existence now watched from the sidelines, powerless to influence a life he no longer controlled. Emily had learned to rise not by reclaiming what was lost, but by creating something new. She embraced the joy of building, the thrill of discovery, and the fulfillment of seeing young artists find their voice. The gallery's success was a quiet yet undeniable rebuke to the past. She had not only survived being underestimated and overlooked, but had thrived in ways Richard could never imagine. On the night of the gallery's anniversary celebration, Emily moved among her guests with ease, greeting collectors, critics, and artists alike. The room was alive with energy and admiration, buzzing with excitement about the exhibitions, the educational programs, and the remarkable journey that had brought Phoenix Arts to this moment. She glanced out the window at the city skyline, remembering the woman she had been, and smiled. She had emerged from the shadows into a light of her own making. Emily's success had not come from vengeance or bitterness. It had come from focus, resilience, and the courage to pursue her own dreams. She had reclaimed her identity, her passion, and her life. And in doing so, she had created a legacy that would endure far beyond the reach of anyone who had tried to control her. She had proven that true power comes not from wealth or influence, but from the determination to live authentically and the ability to lift others along the way. As the celebration wound down, Emily reflected on how far she had come. The gallery's walls echoed with laughter and conversation, a living tribute to her journey from invisibility to recognition. Richard Hayes's world of control and superficial triumphs was irrelevant here. Emily had built something lasting, something meaningful, and something entirely hers. Her story was no longer defined by a marriage, a husband, or the opinions of those who had underestimated her. It was defined by her vision, her passion, and her relentless pursuit of what mattered most. Emily knew that the greatest triumph was not just in professional success, but in the freedom to be herself fully, unapologetically, and without compromise. This journey from silent submission to full self-expression left a lasting mark on everyone who witnessed it. She had become a model of resilience and empowerment, showing that even after betrayal and dismissal, it is possible to rise stronger, to claim one's voice, and to inspire others to do the same. Emily Carter had not only reclaimed her life, she had transformed it into something extraordinary, a beacon for anyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. Do you feel inspired by Emily's journey and the way she reclaimed her life? Yes or no? If her story moved you, comment below what part resonated most with you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon to get notified of our next incredible story. Tell us which country you are watching from, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today.